This is Brad Pederson, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
Yeah, I'm live from Benicia right now, talking with Brad. Brad is a founder of a company that does a couple of things. He makes cases for phones out of recyclable, recoverable, less harmful products than straight plastics. And you also have your what I would call like your dirt making machine. But welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you coming here.
Pete, super grateful to be spending some time with you. I've been following your podcast and listening to some of the interviews and the guests, and it's been fascinating. It's been some really enlightening moments for sure.
Yeah. So is Pela the beginning of this story, or does it start before that?
My story starts before that, and if you want, I can certainly.
Let's do that real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I live in Canada. And I actually refer to myself as the real world Santa Claus. I just don't have as big a beard or belly as he would. But everybody knows the North Pole is based in Canada. And therefore, as a toy maker from the North, I am the guy who was closest embolic of what he did. So in any event, I spent close to 30 years of my life making kids play things. And it was an amazing experience with lots of highs and a number of lows. And it taught me a lot about resiliency and what it takes to build something that is scalable, sustainable, durable. But also at the end of it, I had this sort of deep conviction that what we did was truly not sustainable for the planet. So during my time, I shipped billions of pieces of plastic around the planet, all to put smiles on kids' faces. But sort of the unknown truth of the toy business is that the vast majority of toys end up in a landfill within 90 days. And I'm not referring to, your Tonkas or your Legos or things that are more durable. I'm talking about those impulse purchases that you buy, kids go home and play with them, they break them, and they end up in the garbage and end up in landfill. So when I exited the toy business in 2017, I had an opportunity to reimagine what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I got clear on a few principles. And one of them was that I wanted to put my life plan before my business plan, which quite frankly, I'd never done before. I said all these aspirational things about how I wanted to do it, but never really was living it. Number two was I established that I only wanted to work with awesome people. And number three is I really wanted to do things that made impact, enduring impact, not just, putting more ones and zeros in bank accounts, but rather how can I do things that are going to matter for the planet? And so that's basically the genesis story of how I got involved with Pela. And Pela was actually started as a waste innovation company. It was originally founded by my co-founder. His name is Jeremy, who is from Saskatchewan, and he is a material scientist, and after playing around with a number of biocomposites, came up with a formula for making a material that was fully compostable, biodegradable, and then decided to apply it to a form factor and picked phone cases. And it just turns out that that's a pretty big industry. They sell about $20 billion of those every year. And if you have a crazy, right? Most people don't realize the number's so big, but and if you think about it, the phones change yearly. Most people trade in their phone every 2 to 3 years, and their old case doesn't fit on the new phone. So it's high velocity waste is what it's created in terms of, a case is made to be durable and last a long time, but people are trading them out. So that was his sort of lucky break, that he picked a great form factor, a great segment of the market, and actually we grew that business quite successfully for a number of years, but we ran into a problem. And the problem is that we couldn't give those products the end of life that they were looking for, because compostable infrastructure is pretty nascent, meaning most people don't have a home composting facility. Industrial composters, if we have them, don't like to take compostable materials because they don't know if it's compostable or not compostable, so they tend to screen and filter it out. So there's just a lack of infrastructure, and that's actually what led to us creating Lomi. And I'm going to pause there because I just said a whole lot, and we can go from there wherever you want to go.
No, I've got some questions. I've talked to a lot of founders, and we have these visions, right? Where like everything's going to be so great when we get there, but there's always that fork where things are not as great. Like AI. Like, man, I love AI and all this new stuff, and I didn't do it today, but usually I'll let like AI kind of write the summary. I definitely check it. I definitely improve it. That
Yeah.
because you can't rely on these things. So you can see the wonderful things that all of these modernity creates. However, you have to get there, right? And this is all a long string of inventions and businesses that fail and make it. And so you do get to the point where, oh my God, we have plastics 100 years ago. Like it's blowing people's minds and it's changing our world. But now we realize, oh, we have to do a better job, right? But in 19 whatever plastic started, it was not that long ago in terms of like you can be alive when plastic started. And now
Yep.
we've kind of come around and said, oh, we have to improve this process yet again. And so you need that plastic step to get where you guys are at. We need to understand how to take our waste and do something besides just turn it into waste. And there's so many businesses doing that. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about that line of discovery that you have to go on, even though there are negative things in that line of
Mm.
waste. But talk a little bit about that and how that drives innovation and how it inspires your ability to innovate and create.
Yeah, no, I love the question. Yeah, look, specific to plastic, first of all, we are not anti-plastic. I mean,
Right.
quite frankly, without plastic, you and I are not having this conversation right now. I think most of my
Plastic.
accessories have plastic components, and it's a miracle material. And we're huge fans of how it's allowed our society to advance, how humanity has benefited as a result. The problem is because it's become ubiquitous and cheap, we've turned it into something that's single use. And
Right.
we say single use is abuse when it comes to thinking about plastic. So, a material that's incredibly resilient with incredible capabilities turned into something that, when it's discarded, doesn't break down easily. In fact, the science is saying it takes hundreds and in some cases maybe thousands of years for it to break down, if it breaks down totally, because what we're learning is that it just turns into microplastics that, quite frankly, never go away. So, look, the first step to any transformation is awareness. And this kind of like ties into the question you asked, like, what is the discovery process? I mean, the thing that we've been created with is this incredible ability to be curious and then imagine the possibilities, right? So the curiosity that we're all innately born with, and in fact, as kids, it's something that kids express really freely. And as we get older, we tend to like squeeze it out of ourselves because we get mature. But that curiosity is what starts the process of imagining that leads to creativity. And creativity is the beginning of where we can start to imagine new possibilities. So if you think about it, like we used to power the world with whale oil. That's crazy.
Yeah.
When you think about it now, that's crazy. But it was a stepping stone to where we are today. And whale oil led then to coal, which then led to petroleum that came from oil, that then is now leading us to solar. But these are all stepping stones towards a clean, abundant future. And along the way, we become aware of the choices that in the moment helped advance us as humanity and create this incredible moment of abundance that we've never experienced in all of history. But at the same time, as we move along, we realize, oh, there's consequences. So how do we then find a better solution? So the curiosity that leads to the creativity, then the courage to actually try it. And that builds confidence that gets us back to more curiosity of how we can just do better and better. And tools like AI, quite frankly, are helping accelerate that flywheel faster and faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no longer possible to know everything within your own field. If you're a doctor and you specialize in, oh, I don't know, prostates, there is so much publication going on and so much innovation outside of the mainstream that you just can't know it all. And so you do need your knowledge robot, right, to help you figure things out. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is you look at markets, right? So we had a guy on the show maybe a year and a half ago. He's down in Mexico in the Tulum industry, where there's a lot of innovation going on. Who would think you would go to Tulum to innovate? But that's where people go. And he is developing a marketable small scale pyrolysis machine, which basically takes waste plastic and it gives it another valuable step on its way to the dump, and so his belief is that if you gather this up, if you make it an incentive, and they're using a cryptocurrency to do this, and you say, hey, bring us a pound of plastic and we will give you a X amount of fuel, it'll turn it back into some kind of a fuel. And there's a little rock of Coke, not the bad kind of Coke, but there's like these, the byproducts are paraffin and Coke. And then what you get out of it is more carbon-based fuel. However, you're incentivizing people to go, hey, if I walk along this beach and pick up 50 pounds of plastic, I'm going to get this much fuel, which I can use to power my house. And so you have these things where we're taking a little chunk out of it. Like you guys are working on how do we put less plastic into the ocean, in this case with the cases. And he's saying, how do we get plastic out of the ocean? Let's make plastic valuable and give it another marketable step. And you guys are just two dudes. There's 1,000 billion ideas within this industry looking to go, how do we create value? How do we change mindsets? How do we market these things? And it really is amazing, all of the different ways we're working on trying to solve this, because it's not going to be a silver bullet. It's going to be 1,000 things. And then 50 years from now, we'll look back and go, whale oil, people use whale oil. And then we'll say the same thing about whatever it is, plastics. People use a car. How much of a car is plastic today? Yeah. And cars are disposable, in the US. I mean, it's just like, that car's done, smash it, throw it away. If you can make that old car valuable, now you can turn it into something else.
Well, look, I think here's the thing. If you go back in history to our ancestors, there was no waste. Everything was valuable. So end of life, in God's economy, everything that has an end of life is the beginning of something else's life, right?
Yeah.
It's only been within the last 100, 150 years that we've created this make, take, use, waste linear economy. And we know it's not sustainable. I mean, landfills are almost at capacity. There's about 15% capacity right now in the United States in our landfills. So we know we don't have a lot more room there. And the only option is, dig more landfills, and nobody wants that, right? Plastics in the ocean, which you've already referred to, is a huge, huge issue with the gyres that are floating around in both the Pacific as well as the Atlantic. So I think, the first step is awareness. Like, we have to become aware that this is not a sustainable path forward. And then we get to choose, and it takes somebody with the courage to dream and imagine a better future, be a time traveler and go into the future and then come back and recreate it. I'm inspired by someone like Elon Musk, who's literally he's saying we are electrifying the planet. Like, we are, in fact, he's got a mission for electrifying the planet, but then he's also got a bold vision about actually how we're going to become interplanetary species. And those are bold visions, but people are starting to believe more and more. He's literally gone to the future, imagined it's possible, and then coming back and recreating the steps to make it happen.
Yeah, it's amazing that I've met so many incredible people who focus on these problems. There's just so many, I don't even want to try to name them all, but one of the guys is looking at the amount of munitions that have been dumped in the ocean. And the only way the world could agree on trying to deal with this problem was to say, we can't worry about anything before 1972. We're just never going to agree on it. So that doesn't exist for now, right? And so you have these deposits of munitions, these weapons of war, that fish are born with cancer, and there's all these problems that come out of this waste. And then we start to realize, oh my gosh, not only is the ocean a closed system, but it's also a closed system into the atmosphere, and so you have water being moved, via vapor, turning into water. And so whatever you put into the water, it stays there, and that's the way we have to look at it. Now, is everything going to stay there? No, but we have to realize a lot of things do permanently stay in the water, and we're slowly contaminating that body. So it looks massive to us on a human scale, but over time, you start to recognize that the entire thing is a system, and one input here will always affect it over here and over here and over here and everywhere else. We're starting to get that idea. We're starting to understand, even with weather, if there's high pressure over here and high pressure over here, 4 systems away, there's going to be an impact in several days. We can see that now because we can go into low orbit and examine almost like the Earth's weather system, like a CAT scan. And so you can now assemble this CAT scan and see it is just one big system where energy is flowing, and you can do better predictive models.
I think that's incredibly perceptive, that I think you're speaking to, that we are understanding at a greater level that we're interdependent with all of nature.
Yeah.
Literally, there's nothing that sits in a silo or a vacuum. It is all interdependent. And in fact, all these issues that we're talking about, whether it's climate change, whether it's food security, they're connected. They're not two separate issues. They're one issue that have interlinkage. Yeah. And but you're right when you said there's no silver bullet. It's going to take all of us deciding that we believe, and I think this is part of our God-given talents, is that we have this ability to actually go and create the change that we want to see for the world.
Yeah, boy, I love that. And I notice that we're not talking about Republicans or Democrats. We're talking about, we have this Earth. It is, and the more we find planets, the less we find Earth. Like we don't find an inhabitable Earth. It doesn't have a giant moon attached to it. All these things that allow us to be us. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist somewhere else, but wherever it is, it's nowhere near here. So it's like impossibly far away. And so it's even more evidence that we have to be good, regardless of where you are politically, we have to be good stewards of the earth. Food is obviously important. We got to figure out how to feed everybody, and also energy, right? Like we can't just say everybody has to go to this new energy style without understanding that what I call now organic energy or plant-based energy, petroleum products, these have value in this system. Let's figure out how to get them applied where they are most valuable, and then where we have enough wealth and tolerance to add, I don't know, whatever, we're going to do solar or wave energy, whatever it's going to be, we can increase the inventions, the innovations that allow it to then maybe go to Haiti. Right now, Haiti just needs to burn fossil fuels more than they burn trees. And that would be an upgrade for them. And we can't deny other countries like India, which is exploding with a middle class that's going to want to have air conditioning and all these things. This has to happen in a way where you have to have this multi-system, and we get to lead the way, hopefully. But it's not just going to be this switch that we seem to want to throw, because that's going to be an inhumane way to deal with folks who don't have enough, I think.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. We can't, if we take a look at how blessed we are at North American level, where we get to focus on first world problems, right?
Yeah.
Developing nations, for us to be pushing down on them, our ideals, when they're just struggling to put food on the table and survival, they're at the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not a fair assessment or constraint. We have to let them, like we talk about openly in our business, that perfection is the enemy of progress. To a place where we get abundance for every human on the planet is ultimately where we want to get to. And I really liked your distinction about, the blue and the reds, and how it's so easy to get tribal and polarized. Right. I just read this the other day, and I thought it was kind of profound, that if you look at a map, it's easy to look at a map and look at North America, see America to the center, and then you notice that Europe is to the right and Asia is to the left, right? And it's easy to position the rest of the world around us. You look at it on a globe. If you look at around globe, you can't actually do that anymore. You have to look at the whole globe. And we need to look more at the globe and less at the map. Like instead of what's tribally different about us, what do we have in common? What are the things that pull us together as a community? And quite frankly, in all the exploration that we've done of the cosmos so far, we haven't found another place as good as this. So we should really be paying attention about getting aligned about what do we do to make this the best place. I mean, I'm sure terraforming Mars will be an awesome expedition, but why not take what already is pretty amazing and just continue to make it sustainable for many, many generations? I think that's a pretty aspirational goal.
And yeah, no, absolutely. And when you talk about terraforming and then dealing with things here, as we make these progressive steps, we're also making missteps. Like we just will make mistakes. We have to accept that. And so we have to continue to learn and get better at this. I totally agree with you there. One of the things that we get hung up on is, I know I do, and I've had people on the show, so I can kind of resolve this for myself. The terms change all the time. Now, this will be a little bit political here, but we'll say things like it's global warming, or it's going to be a new ice age, and these things are packaged to scare us. Now it's global climate change. When we don't understand it, we try to repackage it. It's a climate chaos. It's all these things, and you can look around and be like, yeah, it's more chaotic. And then some person who studies weather is like, you realize in the first half of the 1900s, weather was much more dangerous and chaotic than it is now. No, I didn't know that. Do I believe that? Now I've got to go. And so you can get spun around in 100 directions. I had Dr. Steven running on. He's a climatologist, and I said, what is the goal here, man? Like, what is? We talk about climate change. I don't know what that effing means. What are we trying to do? And he's like, how about we get carbon in the atmosphere to 400 parts per million and just manage that? We can manage that today. Maybe it'll get better later on so we can do more. But if we did that, and he's like, and by the way, he's a climate guy. He's the guy that rides his bike to work, right? It's like, by the way, if we continue to go this direction, coal is going to be less and less marketable, and it will no longer be a broadly used thing. It will be need to be used in some areas, but we won't be using it here very much at all in the U.S. Or it'll become some other use case for something else. He's like, so we're making progress, but that 400 number, that's something that we should focus on, and then reverse engineer from there, so we can say we can manage 400 parts per million, and we don't want to manage the Earth's climate, at least not yet, but we want to be able to say this is how much carbon we're comfortable having because we think we can deal with that.
Yeah, look, I think it kind of comes back to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We don't do anything in a vacuum. So this giant experiment of we're going to pull petroleum out of the ground, we're going to burn it and send it to the atmosphere and say there's no cause, no effect, I think that is misguided. Yeah. So it's not really, is the correct vernacular, global warming, climate change, climate catastrophe, whatever you hear it. It's just what impact are our actions having? And are they having impact that will be detrimental to the future? And, the one thing I've come to learn about human behavior, that there's two things that motivate us as a species: hope and fear. Now, fear is the greater motivator. It's what's kept us alive. It's, when the saber-toothed tiger was around, that was the thing that kept us, the fight or flight. But it is less, while it's natural, it's less optimal. Hope is actually a more powerful motivator. However, media knows that what gets your attention is to actually strike fear into your heart. So that's why we see all these sensationalized news, and pretty much why I don't watch the news, to be honest. It's constantly, CNN stands for constant negative news. It's trying to trigger you to be concerned and scared. And, I'm a big believer in thinking about hope and possibility and abundance. And that's not to, to sort of paint a future of a Pollyanny sort of outcome. But at the same time, I think that we as humans have the capabilities to solve the problems that we've been involved in creating. And, so I think we have impact, and I think that it's up to us to do the research to understand what the impact is and what do we need to do to mitigate those risks. And I think we, quite frankly, put a lot of things in place. I don't like the genie's out of the bottle. Every corporation in the world right now is talking about ESG. It is the most common buzzword, and people are being measured on what they're doing, and the greenwashing is being flushed out. Is it still out there? For sure. But there's more and more people that are calling BS on whether or not corporate citizens are acting responsible. And, I think that as a society, we should expect that there's just a whole wave of green innovation that's going to continue to come at us in the form of solar. Nuclear, I think, is viable. Wind is coming. I think that all of these things are going to be innovations that, quite frankly, are going to make us build a sustainable future that we all envision we can have.
Yeah, the greenwashing thing is a whole different topic, and I kind of want to avoid that because I don't want to get distracted by it. It is super important, and I would love to talk about it, but I'm not going to right now. I got a couple reminders here to ask you questions, though, because and I'm probably never going to get to both of these things. One is when we do look at these things that might make a difference. I know because I've had a lot of shows on the climate. I'm trying to understand this stuff, right? And if you believe the number, if you take the top 20 shipping container ships, they pollute more than all of the cars ever. And these ships are getting bigger. They are digging deeper holes for ports, so bigger and bigger ships can go places. So there is an efficiency model there, but oh my gosh, am I going to worry about my effing phone case when, could I just buy less shit from, we'll just say China in this case, we'll pick on China. Should I just buy more stuff locally, And we're not going to go back in time. Every town's not going to have a cobbler, I don't think. But they're like, am I making a difference by buying a phone? And I'm not trying to bang on your product at all. I'm just saying, like, we're all in this conundrum of like, should I just buy a leather belt or should I buy a non-leather belt? Oh my God, it's made from plastic, and all these things, right? So can one person make a difference? Do we need to worry about? Is that the place to start? How do you guys wrap your heads around? And we'll move into the composter, but like when you look at a phone case, it seems not only insignificant, but then it's like it's expensive. And so I know this is a barrier you know how to get around, but that's why I want to bring this up, because you sit there and you go, why does it, like I always say, like my desire to have an air conditioner on to keep the house at this temperature is not going to ruin the world, right? And so if I took that away, it wouldn't improve the world. It would just be an insignificant data point that's a picobit in a world of gigabits.
Yep. Yeah. I love the question. It's a great challenge. And certainly, you know, I think it's pretty natural to feel somewhat powerless, right, by everything that's going on. Like, what difference can I make? I once heard a story, and I want to share it because I think it's valuable in terms of the context of this. That there was a young boy and an old man on a beach, and the tide had gone out, and behind the tide there was a bunch of starfish laying all over the beach. And this old man was picking up the starfish and one by one throwing them back in the ocean. And the little boy was watching, and after a period of time, seeing him do it over and over again, he finally went up to the old man and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, these starfish are exposed to the sun, the tide's gone out, and if they sit here long enough, they're eventually going to just dry out and die." And the little boy kind of looks at it and says, "Wow, okay, I understand that." The old man picks up another starfish, throws it back in the ocean. Then the boy looks down the beach and sees the thousands of starfish. And he looks up to the old man. He says, "There's so many of them. How can you possibly make a difference?" The old man looks at him, picks up another starfish, throws it back in the ocean, said, "I made a difference for that one."
Yeah.
And I think it was Mother Teresa that was quoted to say that, you know, if the world would be a cleaner place if everybody would just sweep their own doorstep.
Boy, there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that.
I
Yeah.
feel like this powerless situation, it's like the spark that leads to a great fire. Like, it takes one person to start anything. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first steps. And I think it's the hope side first. If we have hope that we can create a better future, then we have to have the courage to try. In small steps compounded have big outcomes. Small hinges swing big doors. So what are the small things each of us can do that actually have a big outcome when you think of the exponential inspiration that we all can be to each other? And I think it's actually a great segue into Lomi, because we think Lomi is the empowering machine for people to think about climate change.
Yeah, let's talk about Lomi, because, and you'll forgive me for this, when you started that last bit, I was like, I hope he doesn't tell the starfish story, because I hate the starfish story. But you know what, though? It does illustrate the point, so I'm going to let it go. But I always say, when someone says that, so I'm going to say it, because I always say it, is, and then we find out 10 years later that man had some kind of botulism on his thumb, and he kills, and, you know, this is humanity. And it's worse and finest at the same time, right? So, okay, look, forgive me for that. I had to say that just because, you know, but yeah, you're right, though. Like, we have to do something. And so if that something today is, I'm going to buy this Pela case, or I'm going to buy this Lomi, then that's what you do. And you get to say, I am doing what I know how to do, right? And make a good thing. Let's talk about Lomi. I'm super stoked about this. You guys almost sold me one of those. Not even talking to me like a year ago, and I'm like, oh, you know what? And because look, here in California, we're supposed to be putting our food waste into a can on the counter. In our case, on the countertop. My dad does it. We do it, and everybody's like, more badgers, more beavers, more raccoons, more smell, more maggots, you know. And so I'm like, oh my god, what can we do? And so I found your guys' machine. This is literally like I think it was 2 years ago, and you guys might have been in like your startup phase. Yep. Anyhow, I was like, oh my God, we should buy this thing. And it got ixnayed, and not because of the quality of the product, not because of you guys, but because we have an old house from the 50s and we have very little counter space. And so we weren't going to sacrifice the counter space for your guys' machine. But let's talk about this magic machine.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of go back to where I finished the story, just so I can tie it together, because this kind of ties in the problem solving piece.
All the way back to the beginning. Right. Okay.
So we're making these compostable foam braces. And by the way, here's one of the things I just want to point out. We're the creators of Pela Case as well as Lomi. These are two separate companies, and they were both designed around the premise of creating a waste-free future. And what I just want to point out is that most corporations in general, like, who would you say is the most sustainable business on the planet today. If I asked you, who is the first company to come to mind? Sustainable business.
Sustainable. I know F1's trying to become sustainable. Sustainable businesses.
Like maybe Patagonia, Tesla.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Patagonia. Yeah. They try to do that. Tesla tries to do that. There's a lot of companies that try to do that. Yeah.
Right. And they're great companies and we admire them a lot. But in general, the positioning is do less bad.
Right.
We're doing less bad than the other guys. We start from the premise of how do we do good? Because we believe that business can be the greatest force for good when it focuses on the triple bottom line of a profitable, sustainable business that focuses on people on the planet. So we created Pela cases. We're selling them. People are saying, hey, how do I give it the end of life? I don't have a home composter. My industrial composter doesn't take it. They were actually sending them back to us. And we were taking them and regrinding the material in some cases so that we can give it another life. Or if we couldn't, we would actually put it into proper industrial composting and break it down into the regenerative soil it becomes. So that got us thinking. And initially we thought, well, let's maybe have a large industrial composter in Canada. We'll bring all this stuff back and we'll look after it at the end of life of it. And after considering hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure, we said, that doesn't seem like a very good plan or probably sustainable from the transport costs. So we took a page from Elon's playbook of why can't we turn every home into a charging station? Why couldn't we turn every home into a compostable infrastructure that supports this greater clean compostable economy? So that was the impetus of starting to design Lomis, which were for our phone cases. And we spent 3 years in design and engineering. We launched it on an Indiegogo campaign in April of 2021.
That's what I saw.
That's probably when you saw it, right? We teased out the promise of it, which, it gave the end of life to our phone cases, but even more importantly, it also provided an opportunity for food waste. So collectively, anything that's organic matter, whether it's compostable plastics or food, breaks down in Lomi. And then the result is this regenerative soil supplement that sequesters carbon and is something you can use in your backyard for your plants. Launched it on Indiegogo. That's when you saw it. We had aspirations that we might do 6 figures with it because in crowdfunding, it's actually hard to achieve that outcome. We ended up selling over $7 million worth. And
wow.
It became the biggest crowdfunding campaign of 2021 and the largest clean tech crowdfunding campaign of all time. And why was that? Well, for all the reasons that you talked about at the beginning, that food waste in general is disgusting. It's a pain point in most people's homes, right? Whether it's the smell, the pests, the bins that you got to clean. Oof. I mean, it's just overall a disgusting process. So we took something that was detestable and turned it into something delightful. Like literally you put all your organics into the machine, hit a button, come back a few hours later, and it's this inert, lovely smelling soil supplement that you can use in your backyard. And that's really what captured people's imagination from a pain point. But then the whole point is that every time you do it, not only are you diverting food that would be going to landfill to create methane gas, but you create an output that not only is good for soil, happens to sequester carbon. So literally we have the only scalable solution that we're aware of at this point to create something that's universally carbon capture. You imagine every home in North America had one of these machines. It would take this detestable thing and turn it into something delightful, taking trash and turning it into treasure because it's now something you can use. It's a waste stream that you can use of value in your yard. And if you live in a condo, well, then your community garden or the green space around it. Or we have people, believe it or not, we have people selling their output to composters and creating an economy out of it because it's of value, right? Like I said, in God's economy, there is no waste. It's valuable to the next generation.
No, that's great. And it makes you think about the things that you can do. So we have on our countertop about 1.5 gallon stainless bucket. It is disgusting. It has to go into the dishwasher. It takes up a lot of space. You clean it. It always smells bad. 1 in 40 buckets fulls gets maggots in it for some reason, because it just does. And you're like, it's even more disgusting. And, then you feel like, because that thing's putting out things and you're not always, so there's stuff everywhere. And you got to clean the whole air. It is really a nasty business. And I would rather throw it into your guys' machine and get the product out of it. Now, is that something that, like we have these giant garden waste containers in Southern California. So could I just take if I don't need it, can I just dump it into there and just send it off to the dump? Is that what happens with it? If I don't, we have garden beds, but at some point, like, hey, we've got enough dirt.
Yeah, I mean that's 100% accurate. I mean, and quite frankly, it solves a problem for the industrial composters who, particularly if you're putting in like, say you get your Uber Eats containers and you put them in Lomi and they break down. Now you're getting an output that's consolidated, condensed, and doesn't need to be filtered at the industrial composter or whoever's taking that material. Where in the past they'd have to screen it and take out whatever was in there because they see it as contaminants because they don't know if it's plastic or compostable or whatever. So they screen it out. You're actually doing them a favor by giving them actually more utility and more access to material.
What does a family for produce in terms of, if they put all of their food waste in there? And I'll say this, the program in terms of getting us to put less waste down the drain, that's for sure working. Like we barely use our garbage disposal at all. And only like, there's stuff in the sink. I'm not going to scoop it out with my hands and put it into the slop bucket, right? So we rarely even put very much food of any substance and size down there. Sure, the yolks and everything go down there, but not the eggshells. The eggshells go into the bucket. So how much dirt is a family producing in a week or a month with your guys' machine?
Yeah, well, let's talk about just food waste in general. How much food waste is in a typical home? Okay. So right now, somewhere between 30 and 40% of your garbage is made up of food waste. That's what's going to the curb. Okay. And I know in California that's being diverted out, but that's from people across the United States. That's about average. When you put that food waste into a Lomi machine, it's broken down into 10 to 20% of its original volume. So if you fill the bucket up and then you process it, you come back, it's just a small amount, right? And the average household is producing about 1,000 pounds of organic waste a year, food waste. A family of 4, that's approximately what you're producing, which means we're taking that 1,000 pounds and reducing it down to 200 pounds or less. So that 200 pounds could be used in like I use it in my lawn. I have a lawn, which is super valuable. But at the very least, think of it from the perspective of waste management. Like you literally don't need the garbage truck to show up to your curb as often. And for people who are paying for use, which I know is a number of jurisdictions, municipalities, states, you pay for the truck to come up, you have less of those. And in fact, we have proven the math that a Lomi will save the average family, I think it's something like $200, close to $200 a year by using a Lomi versus actually continuing to have the pay to use waste disposal that a number of municipalities face. So, it's profound, the impact, not to mention the strain on waste, the landfills, and then all the other good things you talked about. You got a regenerative soil supplement, carbon sequesters, reducing methane gas. It literally checks so many boxes that you can tell why we're passionate and excited about continuing to evangelize the potential of this thing.
Yeah, no, you're right about it is impactful, right? And you mentioned a key word, methane, because we worry about carbon, but methane's nasty. That's hard to break down. We're hoping to break methane down into carbon. like that's the goal here, right? And this is the thing again about man's fingerprints on things. We have all these water reservoirs because we need water. And what we've learned now through science is that when you have a water reservoir, you off-gas more methane than you do if there was no water reservoir there, right? And so it's like this confounding thing where you're trying to store water. However, it creates this harmful greenhouse gas. So again, going back to the complexity of the cycle, let me get back to the machine. So what can go into, like, we don't get Uber Eats, but I know a lot of people do, but you're saying like if the packaging you get has the triangle, a recyclable triangle, you can just jam it into your Lomi and your Lomi and turn it into the soil?
So no, does not look after recycling. It looks after composting. They're different marks. We actually have on our website a number of, if people are curious, we tested a bunch of different packages and materials, and we have a number of Lomi approved partners. And we have tested lots of the Uber Eats container trays, and they work perfectly. But if anybody's curious, go to our website, you can validate that. But yes, the idea being is that what can go in it is your food waste. So what does that look like? Well, that's all your peels. That's the leftover table scraps, which includes the vegetables, the meats, the dairy. We do not differentiate between that. We are we do suggest diversity. You want a little bit of everything. In other words, if you just put in pasta, well, it's hard to just break down pasta. You need to have the nutrients from across the spectrum of both the browns and the greens go into it. And, there's things that we don't recommend go in there. For instance, beef bones. The machine is not yet able to handle a beef bone. We actually also don't recommend avocado pits, but I put my avocado pits in and it works perfectly. So I've personally had no problem with that, even though it's not something we recommend. But anything that basically is organic and is degradable, we break it down. And, one of the other things that, less of an issue for you if you're in California, but in a lot of places in the United States where they actually have, winter, and I know you guys had winter this year as well, but if you have winter,
we didn't like it.
But, people just say, well, send it to the composting, or I've got a home composter. Well, guess what? In the wintertime, you can't do that. Where this solves the problem year round of being able to process food waste, irrespective of seasonality.
So no beef bones, but pig bones, okay? And bird bones?
So again, I'm going to go by what it says on the website. We say no bones in general.
No bones.
My experience, I have had success with avocado pits, with chicken bones, no problem because they're soft. But yeah, I would not recommend beef or pork at this point in time. But I will say that is something that we're working on in terms of future innovations.
So let me see if I can make a rule of thumb. If it goes on my plate and it's not a bone, I can toss it into the and it doesn't like a pit that would I'm not going to shove a walnut in there or whatever. It's things that are hard like that. But if it goes on my plate, the waste from that plate goes into the bucket and you guys turn it into the soil.
Correct.
Okay. And how about like milk or soda and those kind of things?
Yeah, I think again, it's like the rule of thumb is not too much, not too little. It's kind of like a mixture, right? If you just poured olive oil in there, even though it's a vegetable, that would not be a good outcome. So it's literally, you need to have a mix of things. So what you just said is perfect. Whatever scraps on your plate, which presumably there'd be some meat, some dairy, some vegetables, some carbs, and it would process all of that.
I'm picturing Doc Brown with this Cuisinart, dumping all the trash into the thing. And I'm sure you get that all the time, but that is exactly what I'm picturing. Like, hurry. How often do you have to make your mix? Like, so I have some cereal, I have a little bit of milk left over, maybe a banana peel. But do I come back at the end of the day and do one blend a day, and during the nighttime it goes?
That's exactly it. And depending on the size of the family, so we have 3 different modes. We have an Eco Express mode, which takes about 3 hours. We then have a bioplastics mold, a Pela, a Lomi approved mode, which basically processes the bioplastic. That's longer, just takes more time to break that down. And then we have a grow mode, and the grow mode is the longest. It's about 18 hours. And the idea behind that is it just lowers the temperature and it processes longer, because it's like anything, what comes out of Lomi officially is not compost. It's what we would call pre-compost. It's something that is on its way to becoming mature compost. It's not there yet. So more time creates more value. I liken it to, are you familiar with winemaking?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So when you put the grape juice into the vat with yeast, the alcohol creation happens pretty quick, right? After that, there's no more alcohol created. What happens is aging happens through barrels, and that adds more flavor. So similarly, like the breakdown process happens pretty quick with Lomi, and with more time, it just gets more microbe enriched, right? So that is the idea being, is that I will every night, we push our button, we wake up in the morning. I'm always amazed. I open it up to see inside. It's no smell. There's no bugs. There's none of that stuff. And it's an inert dirt that's in there. And I tend to not empty it right away. I just put more food waste in on top of that. And we press the button, because keep in mind, it's going from full down to like 10, 20%, full down to 90%. So I probably go 2-3 days before I then empty that bucket into a 5-gallon pail in my garage. That when that fills up, which quite frankly takes months, that's when I go and fertilize my lawn with it.
Let me see if I understand what you said. So you're going to put your daily family waste into the Lomi, and then you're going to process it that night. But you're going to leave the product, the proto soil, and you're going to leave that in there. You're going to come in the next day, do that again, next day, do it. And then about day 3 or so, you're filled up and you go, okay, I'll take this into the 5-gallon bucket in the garage. You dump it out there, and then it's not, it's 10% or so of the size. So instead of having two 45 pound iron plates going into the food waste thing, you're slowly turning this into a fraction of that, and you end up with a pile of this proto soil that you can then do something with, scatter it in the garden, put it into the grass, all of that. Like, and it's just a daily take out the trash kind of process, basically, with the machine somewhere in that mix. Did I do that a pretty good job of explaining that?
Pete, you could be a spokesperson for us if you want.
There you go.
You said it perfectly. And then the unexpected great, quite frankly, is you'll notice that your garbage bin to the curb is rare, and you actually have a whole lot less garbage going out, and it overall is a more delightful experience.
I will say that our trash bin, it does get trash in it still. We probably could sort a little bit more, but with the food waste going into the garden waste thing. Oh yeah, that's a good question. Could I put garden waste in there? Could I put grass trimmings in there?
You could. Yeah, it's organic.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like bougainvillea branches, though, right? You wouldn't want me to put that in there?
I don't really know again, I've never tried it. I will tell you that when my wife buys roses and clips the ends, we always put the stems in there with that.
Oh, okay.
It's not a problem. So if it's organic, again, it's part of God's economy. It'll break down.
Do you know about terra preta?
I don't know.
It is sort of what you're making. So there's scientists couldn't figure out why the Amazon was so productive and how it could possibly have fed all these people pre-Columbian times. And what they made was this slow burn. We still don't know how they made it, but they made this, like, they took their trash, put it out in a pile, and they did the slow smoking burn. And it is self-enriching. And so no one's done this in 500 years in many of these places, but this soil is so rich in nutrients, it just continues to create all of this richness. So they literally invented something similar. They just, did it in a backyard with a little bit of smoky fire, and they're really not sure exactly how it works out. I'll send you a link for it, but it's an amazing thing, and it sounds like you guys have approximated that in the kitchen. Let me ask you this: and I'll let you talk about that in a second. How loud is this machine?
Yeah. So I don't. It's not that loud. I mean, there is a noise. I'm not going to deny it. And in fact, if there is one complaint, and by the way, if you go to our website, you'll see the reviews. And if you don't trust those, go to Amazon and look at those reviews. And it's pretty consistent. We have 4.7 out of 5 stars. So pretty much people are really enjoying their Lomis. And we've shipped close to 200,000 units into the market. So it's not like we have just a few. We have quite a few out there in a short period of time. The exact number, I think it's 0.46 decibels. It's
not that bad.
It's not a big deal, but I'll also tell you that we have 2 or 3 new machines that are coming out in late 23 and beginning of 24. And every generation just gets better and better in terms of efficacy, in terms of quietness. And you should expect that. Like, generation 1 iPhones versus what we have now are very different because they just get better with technology. And we've literally continue to improve every aspect of the product, including the sound as a priority. But to your point about the regenerative piece and the Amazon enriching soil that you were referring to, and what was the name of it again?
Terra preta. I'm going to put a link for Wikipedia's article on it here. Not that they're the greatest source, but they're fast when I'm doing a show. So everybody can look up terra preta right there. Terra preta. Okay, I'm saying it like an Italian. It's a Brazilian word. Anyhow, please continue.
Portuguese roots. I mean, common Latin language.
Right.
So just, here was something that we didn't expect that we're really thrilled about. And this is just a whole nother side to it. We wanted to test the output, the value of the output, just to see, first of all, make sure it's not harmful, make sure it did have value. And what we were surprised in an incredibly delightful way was that the output turns out to be a superfood. And we didn't expect that. And so we literally partnered with the University of Toronto, as well as University of British Columbia, and a local farm. And they tested the Lomi output in the different modes, compared it to the top-selling organic fertilizer, commercial fertilizer, and then nothing whatsoever. And after a season of crops, the results were staggering. Like, we literally had higher growth, higher yield, higher, like, on every level. Mm-hmm. And that's not even something that we factored into the economy of what we're creating. But it also speaks to why we now know there's people who are selling their Lomi output as something of value. They're going to farmers markets and selling compost from their Lomi to people who are looking for nutrients for their plants. So just a sidebar that ties into your story from Brazil.
Well, and also it goes to the thing I wanted to talk about is just, if you invent something, people are going to hack that thing and figure out like, here's my recipe for the best loamy soil, and they're going to like, you have to have 5 parts shrimp, 1 part banana peel. They're going to like, someone's going to figure this out and take the time to do the testing. And you'd be like, yeah, go do it. Go crazy. You're turn your smoothie into, the biggest banana crop you've ever had in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it's not that loud, and it's not that expensive. Ultimately, the price point is at 500-ish for this thing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we've got a couple different options for people. So the options range on the consumables. So people ask, well, what is the consumable? Well, there's filters. Okay, we have carbon filters that quite frankly are a necessity of this product. The carbon takes the odor out of the process to make the experience delightful. But it has a time limit. It becomes saturated, and after about 45 cycles, if you haven't changed your carbon, you'll notice it. So it's definitely a trigger there. You go, I better change my filters. So we have $4.99 is how you can purchase it, and then you can buy the consumables as you need it. Or there is a lower price point. I think it's $3.49 if not mistaken, and that's if you sign up for the subscription for the consumables, which we send out based on your usage. Like you can customize it to how often you think your family's going to be using that. And the other consumable is Lomi pods, and basically think of it as a probiotic. It's a small tablet you put into the Lomi machine when you start the cycle. And those microbes actually create the health output, or help break down and create a more healthy output, especially if you're going to be doing some gardening or anything in your backyard. And they're not needed. You don't need it. It's like I tell people, if you run your dishwasher, you don't have to put a soap tablet in there and they'll come out cleaner. But if you want the best outcome, you put the tablet in and the dishwasher creates a better solution. So likewise, these little pods just create a better output.
I guess the other question we have to ask, and we're going to run out of time here if we don't cover it real quick, is here I am. I'm Mr. Hippy Dippy. I've got a bun, and I eat vegan, and I put my stuff into my Lomi. But how much electricity am I using? I'm trying to produce all these things.
Yeah, that is the number one question. I'm glad you asked it. Look, I'm going to come back to my opening statement, which is perfection is the enemy of progress. I wish Teslas could be charged by the sun. I just wish they could be. For the moment, they can't. But it is still progress towards a better future. And eventually, I believe they will be. But the electrical pull on Lomis is very low in terms of usage. And again, our website puts all that out. And in fact, it's broken down by your geography because every jurisdiction has different powers of the grid. Some are hydro, some still use coal, shockingly. But we've laid it all out. The important point is that Lomi is the first carbon negative appliance. But when you receive it, not only have we covered off the carbon offsets already as a company, because we're B Corp and that's just what we do, but as you use your Lomi, it will generate microcarbon credits. Well, generally speaking, they're not officially carbon credits, but it's sequestering carbon. And we're heading to a place where we ultimately believe that, this is back to that Mother Teresa quote, that every person has the ability to do their part to impact climate change by running their Lomi. They press the button, and literally not only is it a surprise and delight process, but they know, hey, I just made a difference for that one.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a silly thing, but there's a couple of things that we could do. Like you could build in a small town, you could build a giant greenhouse that turns a fan, and that fan could power a good portion of that community. I mean, it's just, because there's a lot of energy in a large community greenhouse. So in theory, you could have Lomis delivering, nutrient dense protosoil, and you can mix all, and you can really become like a self-sustaining thing. We also, and this is the kind of the crude part, but there's a real thing here is we are so wealthy in our countries. We have potable water that we poop into, we push a button and never think about that product again, and we really could do better than that, whether we're powering it through the sun or something else. But it seems like that there's a waste product that could be turned into a product that could be turned into something else and not have to have all of this digging and heavy machinery that scratches things out. This is just in Pete's magic world. But it amazes me. We take something that's so valuable to the rest of the world, and we're just like, yeah, we're going to poop in this, and just gone, never think about it again. And in fact, it goes somewhere, and it takes a lot of energy to turn it into something else.
It is a great problem for some founder to go solve, because I agree with you that is an opportunity that has yet to be fully unpacked in terms of the possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's just my little silly bit. Hey, what did we not cover that you want to cover?
Look, I think this has been a fun interview. I've enjoyed talking. I mean, I spend more time in sort of the wonder and imagination piece, and I would say we've covered a lot of ground in that. My background being a toy maker, I kind of teased that already, but I think everyone should know is that even though I'm here at this point in my life working on what I'd say are very first world problems and things are aspirational, I came through a bunch of difficulties. I started a toy company that I crashed and burned not just once, but 3 times. And I learned to figure out how to take my adversities and put them to my advantage. And that, often when we listen to these interviews, it's hard to relate to the people on the other side, because it feels like, oh, they just had like this idea and it worked, and, they're rock stars. And I just want everyone to know that from my standpoint, that is not the furthest from the truth, that everything that has happened didn't happen to me, but for me as I reflect on it. And, I feel really passionate about this point in my life and having the opportunity to work on these problems, but it was a process to get here. And there is no straight line to success. There is a bunch of zigzags that often look like detours. So,
yeah. That sounds like my life too. Did we grow up together or something? This is crazy. Yeah, it's remarkable. And you're right. Like you have to screw a couple companies up to learn how to actually build one. Hardly anyone does hit the home run the first time. It does happen, but it is not a reliable path. So I appreciate you staying on that path and taking care of all of this. And everybody should go out and get a Lomi. Let me put that link back up there as we get ready to wrap this thing up. Check it out. There it is. Anything in closing before I push the button and run the credits?
No, I appreciate my time with you today, and appreciate you and what you're doing in terms of being a voice in the world that's looking to make impact and change. And thanks for having the courage to do it.
Yeah. All right. Stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours